Hello everybody, I'm Robin Michael and this is the start of the creative session and a Thursday which really should be called Cello Thursday, because I think after this you're going to have my two wonderful colleagues, David Munn and Sue Lee, for different sectionals, and that'll be fantastic. So we're going to kick off today on Super Cello Thursday with this creative session. Now, the idea behind this was to, first of all, create a section in the Vaughan Williams where you would all get a chance to improvise. Now, why is that important? Why is that even pertinent to playing music? Well, there's a number of things. I remember when I was a student, one of the most important cello teachers of the late 20th century, William Pleath, he would always impress upon his students that the best way to start one's practice, no matter what you had to prepare, was just to have 10 minutes of sort of mucking around, making things up, because actually that sort of freed you up, got you into playing. And in fact, in different periods, centuries before, all musicians, it was absolutely part of their whole sort of what their DNA as musicians, that they were improvisers as well as composers. Now, in the Baroque era, actually the word improvisation didn't exist. They would talk about, when somebody made something up, they would talk about it as a fantasy. I shall now play a fantasy on these notes, and I shall now play a fantasy using this theme. But of course, it's a very, very important part of being a musician. And in this particular piece, in the Thomas Tallis Fantasia, we've taken the join, we've taken some of the music out, and hopefully you've already seen the video that I've done explaining what I've done. We finish in a section in F minor, and then you'll hear some of the ambassadors playing music that will come after the improvisation. So they will play, and then we'll actually settle on a groove. Now, maybe the word groove isn't a word you might associate with Vaughan Williams, but groove exists in every type of music, and I've slightly changed the groove from 1920s Cotswolds to a sort of Miles Davis groove from his album, if you like, his 1959 album, Kind of Blue. And you hear Alice on the bass playing this fantastic bass line, which is a bit like all blues. And what I've said, what I've given you in the introductory video is I've given you two scales to improvise on, two modes. Now, here's the thing. Often when we talk about music, classical music, jazz music, and we try and analyze it, the words that we use can actually sound very complicated when in actual fact they're not at all. So, the first thing, I'm going to make a disclaimer here, and I'm going to push you really very, very far in the next 25-30 minutes in terms of material and maybe new things to think about. But if there's anything that goes way like that, don't worry, because after I've had my lunch, I'm going to write all of this down on a couple of sheets, and you'll be able to download it. You'll be able to see everything that we've been looking at. Okay, so what is a mode? In fact, what is modal music? Because in fact, the Vaughan Williams that we're playing, for me, is a piece very much in that vein, modal music. And for me, what that means is that it's music that doesn't necessarily have to fall one way or the other. In other words, we don't hear cadences in the same way. Now, what is a cadence? A cadence is simply when you hear a chord that has tension, usually a chord 5. Again, don't worry if you've never heard these expressions, I'll write them all down. But you can, if you just listen to this chord, you can hear these two notes want to move. This one wants to come down, and this one wants to go up. And that's what's called a perfect cadence. Now, in modal music, the music can shift around much more without having to have these sort of pivot points. So in other words, Vaughan Williams, what he does a lot is you hear, and in fact you hear this in the Tallis Fantasia, you hear where there are chords which can move like this, in a much more sort of linear way. Now, why is that? Well, what is a mode? A mode is literally just an ordered number of notes which retains its order, if you like. So I could give you a mode, and I'm going to give you one now, and this is what we're going to be sticking with for this session, and that is the scale of G major. Now, shall we all just play a scale of, I'm going to remind myself what G major is, because I haven't actually played the cello yet today. So I'm just going to do one octave of G major, concentrating on the sound. Now, I've called that G major. I could call it Fred, but what it is, it's a mode. It's an ordered number of notes with an ordered number with specific intervals. Okay, interval is just the space between two notes. So this G, what we call G major, there's a tone between G and A tone between A and B, a tone between, a semitone between B and C, a tone between C and D, a tone, and a semitone. And that's what we all know a major scale, and hopefully we all practice our major scales, our minor scales, our harmonic, melodic, our arpeggios, our double stops, all of that. But maybe what we don't do enough is actually start practicing these scales starting on different notes. And that is exactly what modes are. I can take that scale of G major and I could start it on A. Now, with the G major still in your heads, it probably still sounds like we're in a nice major key. But in fact, what I'd like you to do now is play that G major scale. We're going to do it slowly, don't worry. We're going to start it on A, and I want you to instead of having the sound of that in your head, I want you to have the sound of that, but with the notes of a G major scale. So in other words, I know I'm going very fast, but don't worry, this is all going to be written down. Here's our G major scale, and we're literally just going to start that on A. We're going to think about it in the context of A minor, because if you remember our G major scale, if we start it on A, we have a minor chord, but it's the same notes of the G major scale. And if we can then, so let's play that together. Let's just, and what I want you to do with this, I want you to, as I say, I'm giving you tons of information, probably too much, but I want you to go away and I want you to experiment. This is all about experimenting, and it's about mucking around with notes. So those notes of a G major scale, I want you to take, but from the context of the aim of starting on A, sound, and that actually has a name. It's called the Dorian scale, the Dorian mode, A Dorian. But again, don't worry about that because names can be sort of confusing. Why don't we? It's a sort of if we just listen to the intervals again. And if I'm going to muck around with the notes. It's minor, there's a sadness, but it's sort of open, isn't it? You can hear there are certain notes that really ring in this scale. For me, that's actually that F sharp. We could go back to being more more conventional, and again, if I play with the F sharp with the C, we're back with our cadence, but that's not the world we're in just now. So we're sticking with this. So just have a little play around with those notes. We're always using A as your bass. Now, of course, what's the next note we could start from our G major scale from? It's B. So let's do that, and let's see how different that is. It's minor, isn't it? Now, is that sadder? Is that more intense? Is it darker? Or is it more open than the one starting on A? Let's play the one starting on A again. Let's play the one starting on B. I don't know about you, but I find that to be a darker sound, a sort of more intimate sound. I'm seeing, are people having, somebody saying it's a bit blurry. Oh dear, blurry, and keeps pausing. Is everybody having problems with this? Somebody in Cambridge says it's perfectly fine. Somebody with broadband in Canterbury says it's okay. I'm going to keep going, and I hope that if you do have problems, you will be able to get this on playback. And as I say, I will. Is the final video going to be this blurry? No, the final video is not going to be this blurry. I hope not. Okay, so for those of you who can see this, and I hope that's the majority of you, we've had this starting on B. This is a darker sound, much more intimate, and that's actually, that has a name as well, and that's called a Phrygian scale. Again, don't worry about the names, I'll write this all down. We can then take our scale starting on C, and it's a very different sounding scale, different sound world completely. What is it? Is it major or minor? Let's just start it again. So again, it's just the notes of a G major scale, but I'm starting it from C, and the sound there you can hear, it's a very bright sound. We've got a major third, but a normal major scale starting on C would be like this. What's the difference? The difference is we've got this. F sharp from our G major scale. It's a much brighter sound. In fact, it's the brightest of all the modes that we're going to be looking at using a major scale. Okay, let's keep going, and I know that I'm going very fast, but just to, all I want you to concentrate on is that I'm just using one scale, a G major scale. Let's go back to our G major scale, just so that we all feel comfortable here. And actually, the way I'm playing this with linked bowing gives us a really good way of hearing the relationship between the intervals. So what I mean by linked bowing is we start and then we link the notes up. Okay, so that's linked bowing. So let's do the one starting on C again. So all the notes of the G major scale, this is the really bright one, okay? Here we go, so this is cello, any sort of open strings you can play against the notes. Because remember, when we're practicing scales, it's a very good thing to always have open strings as a reference point for your intonation. So you still there? Sorry, it's technological chaos here. Yes, so you can use your open strings also to sort of, in this case, okay, so that, I'm having problems here myself technically here with technical issues. Hopefully that's sorted out. So let's now start on D, our 5th degree. So this is our G major scale starting on D. I hope everyone's now, even if it's blurry and even if people can't if it's still blurry, I'm very sorry. There's nothing I can do here about things. I'm really sorry. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. So starting on D. Well, it's almost a major scale, but with our notes from the G major scale, we've got... Now what sort of... It's not a sort of dark scale like one of those minor ones. It's an open scale. In fact, it's a dominant 7th scale. Again, it's not important if you understand straight away what these are called. All I want you to think about and to muck around with is the sound of them. Okay, is the sound of how these notes work from our basis of D. So let's just do that again. So we're going to play D. We're going to go up the notes of a G major scale. And back down. Have a muck around, but always keeping the D as the fundamental, the low note, the sort of root, if you like. Now that is called a Mixolydian scale, and actually it acts, that is the one mode where you do feel that you want to resolve, don't you? Because we've got this, right at the start when I was trying to explain the difference between sort of conventional and modal music, there we've got that pool, but there are lots of other notes in it as well. So again, take your G major scale, we've got that C natural there, and again, no matter what level you're actually at in terms of fluency, you've got, as long as you've got your 1 octave G major scale, we can do this together. Okay, so we've done D, we're over halfway. We're going to start now on E, and let's just get the sound of E, the tonality of E. We don't know yet if it's major or minor. We're going to find out very, very soon. So let's start our G major scale starting on E. What do you think? Major or minor? Well, that's a very... obviously a minor scale. What's it like in comparison to the other two minors? Do you remember the other two minor scales that we've had? We had one starting on A. We had one starting on B. And now we've got this one on E. How does that one relate? I mean, it's really, this is for you to sort of muck around with and think about, but for me, this one here starting on E, the there's a sort of darkness to it. It's not as intense as that one. It's maybe slightly darker. And this is the joy of being a string player. We can, all the colour that these scales have, these modes have, we can use what we have at our fingertips to evoke the colour from these scales. So yeah, I think this one's starting on, and actually that's one that you're going to hear a lot in the Vaughan Williams. And in fact, one of the scales that we're going to be using to improvise with, which you should already have as a PDF. So we're almost at the top of our G major scale. What's the last note in our G major scale? It is a F sharp. So we're going to do an F sharp, a G major scale starting on F sharp. Now probably you're thinking, oh, F sharp major, that's horrible. It's got nothing to do with F sharp major, although you should always practice your F sharp major scales. You get lots of F sharp major in Verdi. If you come to play lots of Verdi, you'll see F sharp major too often. But this is our G major scale. It's very hard to hear that not in the context of that low note. So let's just put this F sharp rooted in our sort of subconscious, in our solar plexus, if you like. We're really in F sharp here. So maybe I'll start the scale from down there. That's very dark, isn't it? In fact, that to me is the darkest of all of them. Those of you who have a C string, in other words, all violas and cellos, just try that. Find your low F sharp. Violins, you'll just have to do it an octave higher, starting on the D string. And go up your G major scale nice and slowly. If you've got an open A, do it in thirds. You see how I'm using open strings, every sort of reference point that's open to me. So that's the 7th mode, and that's called the Locrian mode. It's the darkest of all of them. So you can see how just with our one innocuous G major scale, we've actually got 7 different scales, starting on each of the different degrees of that one G major scale. Maybe I'll just recap over that. I'm just checking what I'm doing for, yes, how I'm doing for time, because this is the subject. I love modes, so I could talk about these for the next 2 hours if you want to keep going. So, G major scale, how many notes are in it? And don't say 8, because the 8th, of course, G is the same as the lower octave. There are 7 notes in this scale: G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then of course, yes, let's repeat the octave, but it's 7 notes. And we can start that scale on each of those notes. So we've got a nice G major, we've got a very sad sounding A minor, we've got an even darker, slightly angry, actually that one, the Phrygian, to me is always a Spanish one. You can think about it whatever you like from whatever country, but that definitely smells of Spain to me. There's the one starting on B. Then we've got this lovely bright one starting on C, which is called the Lydian. Then we've got one on D, which is a kind of, that's our real dominant sounding one called the Mixolydian on D. Then we've got this, I think the most soulful of them all, the Aeolian. You can even do a bit of Elgar with it. And then we've got the really, really dark, intense Locrian, which we're going to start down here for the cellos. Still a little bit of Spanish influence there. So, those are our 7 possibilities, just with that one scale. Now, stop, time out. In the Vaughan Williams improvisation, I'm asking you to take 2 of those for our improv. Okay, so I've actually gone way beyond what we're going to have to do putting this together. And I'm going to ask you, because the section, the music that the sort of link passage that I've written into it, we fall into E minor. I think I demonstrated it at the beginning of the video, this. We're going to be in E minor, but it's an E minor using that G major scale. Okay, so the notes that you've just been playing now are G major scale starting on E. That's our first. Remember the bass line that I played you? And then we're going to go down to D, but it's the same notes we've just been playing. Okay, so we're always playing notes from a G major scale. Nothing in this session will ever be anything but G major. You'll be sick of G major after 3 weeks. I can promise you, if there are enough people that are sick of it, we can transpose it into whatever key you like. But believe me, this is going to be, I think, sufficient. So we're going to have these 2 chords, E minor, D7, but it's the same notes, always the G major scale. Just keep saying to yourself, the same notes, G major scale, but we're starting them, the first one on E, and the second one on D. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with that, just that I know your head's probably spinning. The first time I had modes explained to me, my brain sort of combusted, and that was with somebody actually writing them out in front of me. So you are going to get this all written out. What I want you to do now is just go back to what we've been doing, which is effectively mucking around with these notes. But I want you to muck around thinking, using these 2 basses. So one of them starting on E, and one of them starting on D. But again, it's always this G major scale. Okay, but I'm just starting on E. So you're going to get, what will happen, in fact I should have explained this before, later on today there will be, you'll be able to upload the ambassadors playing this middle section and the improvisation section, which is going to be put on a loop. So you'll be able to have 3 or 4 minutes of just these 2 chords. And you can muck around to your heart's content, and just remember G major. Now, the last thing to put to that is, what sort of feel are we going to be, is there any sort of technical aspect to this in terms of string playing? Well, of course there is. There's always a technical aspect. And with this, because we're going to have a sort of slight jazz feel, how do we bring that about in the bow? How do we have that sort of swing? Well, that involves a technique that's actually it's something that we all need to have, and it's something that you need to have if you're playing unaccompanied Bach, because it's all about down bows being strong and up bows being light. Now this is effectively a triplet rhythm, bum ba bum ba 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 ba, the first and third of each triplet. But of course, whilst on the piano we can just with fingers beam bum 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 beam bum bum. With the bow we have the problem of bow distribution. Yeah. So in other words, we're going to use effectively a slow bow for the down bow, and then a faster lighter bow for the up bow. So let's just, I'll tell you what, we've got a little bit of time left. Let's just practice that in our scale starting on E. Let's just do a... We could even just do it on... Slow it down in terms of the rate of change with each note. So I want you to just have a go at that, and always it's a triplet. Actually, it's what, when we're playing French Baroque music, we'd call inégal, unequal, because instead of playing, we're swinging it, but it requires a real suppleness here, and always thinking in terms of circles. There's nothing at all straight line or rigid about this. Okay, so again, scales are such good tools for getting fluency, no matter what aspect we're working on. So I've already given you quite a few today. Let's just concentrate on these ones starting on E and then D. So let's do the same thing now with this beam, bam, 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 rhythm starting on D. And then start mucking around between the two. And again, this is now for you to take away and to sort of experiment with. And it's the sort of thing that you want to be doing this where there's no time pressure, so that you've got the time to experiment. And it's true that, you know, when you come to playing your unaccompanied Bach, for instance, this kind of bowing, and I'm going to, in the next tutorial, talk extensively about how to practice this. You will find this all over the place, particularly when you're playing things in for instance, 3/8. Where there's a down bow, a long down bow, and a short up bow. So it's exactly the same principle, but we're just now doing it with a slightly different feel. Now, I'm conscious of time. We're sort of running out of time. Are there any questions? There's been so many sort of comments that, and most of them were about things being blurry, that I had to sort of stop watching them. But are there any questions? I'll tell you what, just as I give people time to think about questions, yes, my first tutorial on YouTube is very much about what this whole improvisation process is going to be, which the Benedetti Foundation has just written. Let me just recap what we're talking about today. I've hopefully introduced you a little bit to the concept of what modes are. And very important in this project that we're doing together, because the Vaughan Williams, the musical language of the Vaughan Williams is very much modal. That is to say that the music can move around in a slightly different way because of how it's constructed harmonically. So for our purposes, we've taken a G major 1-octave scale, and we've taken those notes always in that order, but starting on different notes. Okay, so the first, there's our first one starting on G. We've also, our second degree, our A, gives us a completely different scale. Yeah, it's the same notes as G major, but we've got a minor sounding scale. Then we've got one starting on B. That was our Spanish. And then we've got one starting on C, which is our lovely bright Lydian. Then we've got one starting on D. Again, always the notes of G major. Then one starting on E. I'm going quickly now because I know everyone's getting hungry for lunch. That's my favourite one. That's the Aeolian, very plangent. then a really dark one starting on F sharp, which we're going to start down there. That's the reason why everyone loves the cello, that sound. That's our Locrian, and then we're back at G. So we've been mucking around with those scales, and for the Vaughan Williams, we're using the two, one that starts on E, and one that starts on D. There's a question here, how do you make sure you keep on the notes of G major? Well, that's a very good question. That's why we practice the scales. And if you can always keep your fingers programmed to those notes, I mean, it's, in a way, the Vaughan Williams is in the perfect key for us because we can use G major scales. The G major scale, it's actually for us as string players, it's actually the most comfortable one to do. If I wanted to try this on a B flat clarinet, what scale would I base it? Well, you just have to transpose, so that would be a scale of A. Yeah? Oh, no, have I got that right? This is where I'm going to get into trouble. Yes, exactly. Anything else? Tips from F sharp major scale. Haha, tips from F sharp major scale. Yes. That's kind of veering off the subject, but I would... When you're certainly on the cello, and I don't want to speak for violinists because it might be completely different, but of course what we have to think about as cellists when we're playing in these positions and we're extended is the position change, is that we're always anticipating with the arm the position change, and always anticipating also if the hand position, if it's going to be extended. So we start in an extended position. You can see there I'm extended, not like that, that's not how to do extensions. Maybe we'll have a chance to talk about that in the course of the next couple of weeks, but I'm extended there, I anticipate the shift, I'm extended there, but then I'm not extended there, I'm not extended there, so I'm always anticipating the hand position. How long have I played the cello for? Well, I'm quite old. I've been, oh my goodness, if I think about that, it makes me very depressed. 35 years I've been playing the cello. And can we have any questions that don't make me depressed? Any questions? No. Okay, so I know that I've gone incredibly quickly through that, and it's the sort of thing that normally can take months, and it may well take months. Don't worry about that in terms of the actual understanding the actual theory. What I want you to have fun with are these two scales, but it's the one scale, G major, starting on E and starting on D. And that's the whole premise of the improvisation. It could not be more simple, but it probably seems a bit sort of like that just now. But I promise you, see it written down, but the most important thing is that we hear it. Okay, so that's where it's up to you to sort of muck around with this. What's my favourite food? Before all touring was stopped, my favourite country to go on tour to always is Japan. And Japanese food, there's nothing like it for me. Did you ever use thumb on left hand to play cello? Yes, use thumb all the time. In fact, just before I came on air, I was practicing my scales and octaves with my thumb, and we have to, because we, certainly in higher positions, the fourth finger isn't so stable, and we need to be able to bridge an octave up there. So yes, we use the thumb. Anything else? Susanna says, I think I've got it. That makes me feel good. Okay, well listen, what strings do I use? That's another good question. I've got guts. I always have gut strings on the bottom, and often the work that I do, I have gut strings on the top as well, open raw gut strings, but I've actually got steel strings on just now. Larsen solo, you can see there, and then these are, what are these? Passioni Perastro. Japan tasty, yes, it's on the website. Anything else? What songs do you search the most on ISMLP? Well, I tell you, it's funny, this lockdown which we're all experiencing, I've actually I used to play the piano. I mean, I still play the piano a bit, but actually I've had the time to actually practice the piano, which I haven't had for about 25 years or so. So I've been searching lots of Bach keyboard music and Beethoven piano sonatas, pieces that I never got to learn when I was younger because I just didn't have the time. Anything else? What's your favourite piece to play? Well, as a cellist, obviously, my favourite concertos to play, of course, probably the same as everybody, Schumann, Dvorak. But actually, my desert island music is late Fauré. We have two incredible sonatas, and actually the second piano quintet of Fauré and the string quartet. They're my two desert island pieces to play. Who is your favourite musician? That's an impossible question to ask. I find there are many musicians I find incredibly inspiring. What's my favourite piece? Again, I think I've already answered that. It just depends on, I go through different phases, pieces. What was I listening to the other day? Mozart Grand Partita for Winds. That, in that moment, was my favourite piece, but it could be anything. Where did you get my cello? That's a good question. This cello was made for me in 2010 by a luthier in Paris, German luthier called Stefan von Baer, who is an absolutely extraordinary human being. Why did I choose the cello? Well, if my parents are watching this, they'll kind of laugh because they certainly didn't choose it for me, but I had growing up in the 80s in the UK, before Thatcher got her claws stuck into the education system, I actually had the chance to have free instrumental lessons, and the cello was the instrument that came round my classroom when I was 8 years old, so I was lucky in that way. What's my favourite football team? It's Raith Rovers, because I'm from Kirkcaldy. Is it a Baroque cello? No, it's a modern cello, but I do play a lot of 19th century gut string stuff with this. I also have a Baroque cello, but it works in both setups. That's a very good question. Does the same scale theory work on the viola? Yes, it works on every instrument. And this is the last one. What's my favourite mode? Well, I think I said that before. I think Aeolian. There's something, I think because Fauré uses Aeolian modes so much, that's my favourite one. My daughter's using her violin pretending to be a cello. Well, you got to start somewhere. I'm going to say goodbye. It's been a pleasure. I'm really sorry if it was a bit blurry for some of you, but keep the questions coming. I might have a chance to answer things afterwards, but as I said, everything I've done today, I'm going to write up, and it's going to be there for you to download all these things about the scales. Okay, Fife had great instrumental teaching. Yes, it certainly did. Here we go, everybody in Fife. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you next week, and there'll be other tutorials up there very soon. What's my favourite scale? I've already answered that. It's Aeolian. Bye-bye, everybody.